Hello ladies and gentlemen, so what we're going to look at today is how to solve a quadratic equation by taking a square root, where you're going to want to have on you your notes, calculator, and then a pen or a pencil. Your learning goals for today: I can solve a quadratic equation by using a square root when appropriate. So there's different kinds of equations. 3x plus 4 equals 16, we've looked at that, it's a linear. And then 3x squared plus 4 equals 16. They're kind of similar. However, the x squared is going to change the way we perform that final step in solving. Plus, it's a clue about the number of solutions. So this 2 is going to say we're going to have 2 answers to it. But you're probably asking, well, can't factoring do this for us? It can't, because factoring is when you're going to have an x present, or a b. So you see how there's 3 terms here? 1, 2, 3. This one only has 2 terms. So this one is going to be used more when we're solving by a square root, is when you have 2 terms and not with not just an x squared term and just a number, not with that x in the middle. Then you can't use solve by square root. What you're going to want to make sure you also have in your mind, and also maybe down, is the perfect squares. You're going to want to make sure you know those, so that way in case you need to simplify a square root, you know those off the top of your head. So let's take a look at an example. I have negative 3x squared plus 5 equals 41. So what I'm going to do is solve it until I get x squared alone. So I'm going to want x squared alone on both sides, on that one side. So first things first, I'm going to subtract 5. And you're going to get negative 3x squared equals 41 minus 5 is 36. Divide by negative 3. Get x squared equals 36 divided by negative 3 is a negative 12. Now, here's when you're going to use a square root, because a square root and a squared are opposites of each other. So basically they kind of cancel out, kind of like addition and subtraction cancel each other out. So you're going to square root both sides. Now, here is something to make sure you always remember. When you take a square root of something, you get a plus or a minus, because if I square a positive 2, I'll get 4, but if I square a negative 2, I'll still get 4. So you got to have both kinds of answers, a plus and a minus. Square root of negative 12. Now, let's break down the square root of negative 12. We know that an I is going to come out of that. So I know I got the square root of negative 1 hidden in this square root of negative 12. And then 4 and 3 can also come out of 12, right? So I can make this x equals plus or minus. Now square root of 4 is 2. This is I. So I got 2I square roots of 3. Just like that. Let's try one more example. This should be solving number 2. My bad. Marsh can't count, I guess. So I got 4x squared minus 5 equals 9. So first things first, add 5 to both sides. I'll get 4x squared equals 14. Let's divide by 4 on both sides. So I'll get x squared equals 14 over 4, which is just 7 over 2, right? Simplify that down. Looks like I can square root both sides. So I'm going to be left with x. Don't forget that plus or minus. Now, when you have a square root of a fraction, you can't leave that. You can't have the square root of a fraction. It's kind of a big no-no in math. So what you're going to want to do is make it into 2 little square roots. So square root on the bottom, square root on the top. But now, another big no-no. You can't have a square root on the bottom. So we're going to want to multiply by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2, which is technically just 1, so we can multiply by that. So I'm going to be left with plus or minus square root of 7 times the square root of 2 is just the square root of 14, and square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4, which is 2. So my answer, plus or minus the square root of 14 all over 2. Alright, let's take a look at this last problem. I have 3 times the quantity x minus 2 squared minus 1 equals 39. So very first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So I'm going to get 3x minus 2 squared equals 40. Then let's divide by 3. X minus 2 squared equals 40 over 3. Now, you can't add 2. Because it's technically in this squared. And x minus 2 squared is not x squared minus 4. Be very careful with that. So I'm going to square root both sides because you got to break x minus 2 out of that squared. So now I'll be left with x minus 2 equals, well, we already know square root of 40 over the square root of 3, right? Because you can't have a fraction under a square root. Oh, Marsh forgot her plus or minus. Don't forget that. Just don't be like Marsh. Okay, square root of 40, I can break that into square root of 4 and square root of 10. So now I have x minus 2 equals 2 square roots of 10 all over the square root of 3. Can't have a square root of 3 on the bottom, so let's multiply by both sides by square root of 3. So I'm going to get 2 square roots of 30 all over 3. Keep forgetting my plus or minus. There we go. Now, notice, x isn't alone. So now what I'm going to do is add 2. If you ever add 2 after you square rooted both sides, what you're going to want to do is just place them right in front of that plus or minus. So I'm going to go 2 plus or minus and then just go ahead and write out what you got. Just like that. And that's the end of this video. See you later, Sabers.